This is week 4, day 7 of 7 days of XYZ, a YouTube channel where I explore a new topic every week related to companies and technology. Since this is the last day of this 4th week, which has been about the Swedish Startup System, I think it's time to kind of wrap up what we have been talking about so far. Like in the beginning of this series, I asked the question, why is Sweden creating so many startups? And I said that I wanted to take a systems approach to that questions and really answer like what is contributing to the success of Swedish startups. And I wanted to draw on like the personal experience that I have, but also complement that experience with data. So first of all, like the personal experience that I had is that I'm working as a talent manager at the leading incubator in Sweden, but I've also worked as a consultant for other startups, and I also started startup projects myself. Since I said that I would take a systems thinking approach, I wanted to kind of visualize the system and the main parts that I've been talking about throughout the week. So if you want to dig deeper in these various parts, you can always, go to these specific videos about the various parts. And I will leave them in the description below. This is just a broad overview. This is what I think the system looks like. Like these are the things that I personally have experienced or are some key cornerstones to creating these startups. And before we go into the things on the corners, let's talk about the output. Like, what is the output of the system? The output is that in 2017, 442 investment deals were made by 570 plus investors in Sweden, and the total funding amount was $1.2 billion. And that is not including the capital that Spotify raised. So in this systems visualization, you see 3 colors: green, purple, and red. And red are kind of the things that are bad in the system, and the green things are kind of the things that are good, and the purple ones are funding sources. So let's talk about the 2 funding sources first. Like, I think 2 important parts here are obviously profits and tax. So profits coming from previous cases, like startups that have made an exit or startups that are generating profits, and that profit is coming back into the system. And there's a reinforcing feedback mechanism here. So the more profits that are, circling through the system, the more opportunity to provide more capital for startups. Like when an entrepreneur is kind of making a big exit, a part of that exit will go to, business angel activities, like meaning that entrepreneur will start to invest in other startups. And this is a reinforcing loop. So, the more money that VCs make, for instance, the more startups can exist. And the tax part is also extremely important. So I think tax is funding 3 things. Like first, it's funding ideas. And what I mean by that is that tax goes to funding universities, and in universities, researchers, students, and professors will get good ideas. And the special thing with Sweden compared to, for instance, US, is that when a researcher in Sweden is getting funded for research and come up with a great idea, that idea is usually owned by the researcher, meaning the researcher can start a company based on that particular idea. While in the US, if you, as a researcher, get money from the federal government and come up with this great idea, then that idea will be owned by the federal government. And the other important thing is that I think the tax money is going towards building teams, meaning a lot of money is going into funding universities, and 5 of the top 200 universities in the world are Swedish. So there's a lot of money coming in there, and there's a lot of students coming out from university that are potential employees of startups, right? And the third thing is in this system is that Sweden is actually investing a lot of money into innovation. They do so in several ways. 2 important things here is like Almi, Vinnova, which are providing capital for entrepreneurs. One cool thing here is Almi, which is providing a loan of 200,000. And if the entrepreneur fails with the money, like if they take the money and then they fail with their business, they only have to return 20,000 to the government. So this is kind of de-risking the startup phase for the entrepreneur. And I think it's a very important thing because it's kind of democratizing starting a business. Like anyone can start a business if they go to Almi Almi get that 200,000 loan, and if they fail, they will only have to pay 20,000. I think 20,000 is like a sum that most people could kind of like save up to. And to give you perspective, 200,000 is roughly like 20,000 euro. And then we have incubators where people come with their businesses, and the incubators help people grow their business. And these incubators are typically funded by the government, and usually they don't get any return. But some incubators do own part of the companies, and then they get return. And then we have like business angels, VCs, and corporates, which are providing capital for startups. And there's this reinforcing mechanism here, which means, the more profit that are coming from the startups in terms of like exits or dividends to shareholders, the more money is available for funding new startups. So the capital part of this is like very strong reinforcing feedback mechanism. Like a VC that are making good deals will just grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is good for the startups because there will be availability of capital. So I think that the capital part is like, if you have a startup in Sweden and need capital and you truly have like a good idea, good team, good product, I definitely think that it's fairly easy to raise capital. When it comes to culture, I think there's tons of great things. There's dedicated startup media, there's great events, both monthly events, yearly events, and there's also a lot of co-working spaces where you can like meet other entrepreneurs. And I think all these are extremely important because it's important to meet people that are doing similar things as yourself, and meeting people that are, having similar problems and kind of challenges as yourself. Consumers are also an important part of this system because Swedish people are typically early adopters of technology. Like basically most people had a computer in their home in 96, and then the government has been funding the digital infrastructure, meaning they have been building up fiber optic broadbands and also mobile internet, and now they're even building like 5G mobile internet. And people are also like heavy early adopters of technologies. And then the final part, which I kind of left to the last part because I think this is like the biggest challenge, is team. Yes, there is like 5 of the 200 best universities in the world are in Sweden. Business salesperson is the 4th most common profession in Sweden, which means there's a good supply of like great salespeople. And the 12th most common job is developer. But those developers are not enough. Like there has been studies saying that we need 60 to 70,000 developers within the next couple of years. And the education system could provide more. But the thing is that there has to be more spots at university, plus people have to actually want to go study those subjects. The solution is like either you outsource development to another country or you hire people from abroad. And hiring people from abroad is possible because like people in Sweden are typically pretty good at English, but there are some challenges, and those are kind of the red parts here. Like the migration laws are problematic, and oftentimes it's kind of the employer that are doing the mistake. So what has happened before is that the employers forget to pay insurance for a couple of months, and this is usually like maybe $50 a month or something like that. And because they don't do that, the migration agency says that the terms of the contract has been like violated and been against the rules, so they deport the person that have that particular job. Like they're punishing the person that are working, providing tax money for the government, not the employer, which is very weird. And then another challenge is obviously like housing. It's very hard to find housing in Stockholm, for instance, but also other cities. And then you have like the tax system. So the problem here is like it's fairly high taxes for working, but also giving away shares or options is extremely expensive for the person that are receiving them. If I would have been an employee for a startup, I would have to pay more taxes if I receive my money in shares than I would do if I would receive them in cash, which is making it harder to, own a part of the startup. And this is like a problem for the whole team part. So this is the system as I see it and kind of the research that I've done over the week. I think, as I said, like the real challenge is like around the team part and mostly about like rules and regulations in that landscape. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. And if you've been watching the other videos, thank you so much. If you think this was interesting and want to see more videos like this, please subscribe.